more people over here. So that's really what's good.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Well, I'd like to start. I thank you for coming out this morning. I see some of us are smarter, and we are congregating in the shade, which is a good idea. But nevertheless, whether or not you're in the shade or here, I want to thank you for coming out this morning. There is a common issue for all of us, and that is the effect of incorporation on the whole town of Incorporated Greenburgh. That is why we're here today. That is what the discussion should be focused on. We're not talking about any other issues that might be related to the town. This is a discussion about the effects of incorporation on the town of Greenburgh. We have with us Tom Abinanti, our representative to the Assembly, who's been working very closely on this issue. I'd like to start off with Tom, who will give us some background on the legislation. Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. Welcome to Greenburgh on this beautiful sunny Saturday. We're in the last week of the session in Albany, and one of the issues that has come up is what do we do with the incorporation law of the state of New York? Right now, the law is 100 years old. It was designed for those who want to form a government out of farmland because they need services and they don't have the services they need. It has clearly outlived its usefulness when we're talking about a suburban environment. We need to make our village law fair. The state of New York's law on incorporating villages is not fair. Our goal is to make it fair for everyone. All across the state of New York, small groups of people are attempting to form new governments so that they can capture property taxes from the larger town, pad their own area, and reduce their own property taxes to the detriment of everyone else in the town. It's happening all over the state of New York. 2 villages in the last several years were formed and failed because they didn't do what was necessary, and they didn't study it properly, they didn't set it up properly, and those villages weren't necessary. It is very dangerous to say that you are going to form a village solely for the purposes of self-interest. Whether that be to reduce your property taxes or to exclude other people, that's just not fair. That's not the way we should be running the state of New York. If the economy changes, which I think has happened in some of those situations where the villages failed, and that tax asset reduces in value, there's no other taxes to go to. If the services aren't available or become more expensive, then it has a major impact on a very small number of people who thought they were going to benefit themselves while hurting everyone else. So I'm looking at particular principles. First of all, everyone who's affected should have the right to vote. That's not just the people who want to form the village in a small area, but everyone who's affected. Everyone in the rest of the unincorporated area. Secondly, we've got to introduce some professional judgment. One of the bills in Albany requires the approval of the controller. He's a fine person with a fine staff who's got the skills necessary to determine what is fair, what isn't fair, what will work, what won't work. He does it whenever we set up a district. He can do it whenever we set up a village. And lastly, we have elected officials who represent the entire area. They should be involved. So, what I am proposing as general principles is, number one, if a group of people want to set up a village in an unincorporated area, all of the people in the unincorporated area should vote. They should have the right to vote because it affects them, it affects their services, it affects their taxes. Number two, that the controller be empowered to approve or disapprove any proposed incorporation. And lastly, that we set up a process that requires everyone interested to submit to the town board of the town, wherever it is in the state, impact statements. And let the town board hold hearings. Let everyone start with the same set of facts. Now, we've heard here in Greenburgh various arguments about whether a section of town should incorporate. People have tried twice and failed because they can't meet the statute's requirements. But we've never really had people talking about the same thing. We've never had the same set of facts. We haven't had an agreed set of facts. Everybody's got their own set of facts. It's really a bunch of opinions. We need the facts. And we need the controller to weigh in. And in the end, everyone in the unincorporated area should have a chance to vote. You know, when you look at a small group of people, may seem like a lot of people in the area that wants to incorporate. But think about, let's use Edgemont as an example. There are some 5,000 voters. The normal turnout is 50 to 60%. Let's assume 60%. So that's 3,000 people vote. Now you only need 50% plus one. That means 1,500 people plus one will get to determine the future of 45,000 people or 40,000 people who live in the unincorporated of Greenburgh. That's 1,500 people determining the future for over 40,000. And that'll determine what resources will be available to the town. That'll determine what services the town will have. We are here in Greenburgh. We're here, the town of Greenburgh is as progressive, as forward-looking as any city in the state of New York. It provides the services that any city in the state of New York provides. Why? Because we have one town where everybody is contributing. Everybody's contributing with we contribute on the basis of ability, and we distribute services on the basis of need. If you break up the town on the basis of wealth, on the basis of class, you are having a disparate impact on the people who need the help the most. And you're segregating people on the basis of class. That is not the America we want. That's not the New York we want. So I'm very pleased to see all of you out here today. We're making it very clear we're not happy with New York state law. We want to see changes. We want to see a fairer system in forming a village. I'm not going to get into the specific legislation. There's several pieces up there. I have some. The chair of the local government committee's got some. One of the senators several senators have legislation. We just want to set forth principles and say, this is what we need to have it done. We need to have it done in the next 5 days. Thank you all for that.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Abinanti. Now, one of the references that was made is of Edgemont. So I want to introduce Hugh Swartz, who's a resident of Edgemont and who have been very much involved with the whole issue of incorporation. So, Hugh, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I want to talk specifically about one of the bills that's up in Albany right now that was introduced by Senator Skoufis from Rockland County. I think it's the bill that should be the one that passes at the moment, even though it does not give the right to vote to all of Greenburgh, which would be unincorporated Greenburgh, which would be my preference, but I want to be a realist as to what we can get done. The thing I like about the bill, that particular bill, which I think is 2553, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the number. The thing I like about that particular bill is that it's balanced in terms of what it does. First of all, it makes it easier for the petitioners to get a petition and approved, a valid petition approved, because what it does is it removes the requirement for the list of regular inhabitants. That has been problematic in two ways. It's been problematic in the first petition that Edgemont did. In fact, they failed to do it correctly. The second time, the court ruled that they did do it correctly, but it was a huge amount of effort for them to do what they did at the time. So that's been removed in this bill, so it makes it much easier for them to do. So what is the biggest requirement to the new bill? the biggest requirement requires them to do a 5-year financial analysis, including discussing the impact on the remainder of unincorporated Greenburgh. Well, that shouldn't be a problem for these folks either. They wrote a 63-page proposal 4 years ago that actually did give a budget. So it needs to be updated anyway now, times have changed. So put together a 5-year plan. They've got very good financial people available to them. They've got a good staff. John Lewis is excellent at finance, and he's one of the heads of the EIC. So they should have no problem putting together that financial plan. Then what does it lack? It lacks an independent person to look at it. The controller has no skin in the game here. It isn't, they don't care about whether it's Greenburgh or Edgemont. That's not their place. Their place is to look at that financial analysis and see if it's valid. The reason why that's important is there's been a lot of misunderstanding, I'll put it that way, as to what the impact will be. Well, clearly one of the impacts is going to be you are adding $3 million, and this is their EIC's numbers, not mine, $3 million worth of additional overhead just to set up the village. That includes their debt service and the creation of an infrastructure. Then if you look at their budget for different services that they now get from the town is less than what they currently pay, including totally eliminating payment to Theodore Young, which could cripple a very vital part of the town of Greenburgh, and also no support for Parks and Rec, which supports Veteran Park, again, a very vital part of Greenburgh. Those things need to be highlighted, they need to be evaluated, and we need an independent person who is, the controller is definitely that, and a person who can do this to validate the petition. So I support 2553. I hope everybody does. I wish Senator Cousins was here because I would ask her to do it. The complaint the last time is we're taking the vote away from Edgemont. This bill does not do that. So I don't know why Edgemont would be against this bill unless they're hiding something financial. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving that perspective of how the effect on Edgemont, because we need to be very clear. It has an effect on Edgemont and a huge effect on the rest of the town. So I appreciate that. We have Bishop Preston. Would you like to say something? Bishop or Reverend Richard would like to write?
Thank you. Greetings to everyone. I would just like to say that I'm here today to support the fact that anything that affects me, I would like to have a vote on. And any bill that does not include that, I don't think is fair to the overall community. And when we're living in a community, we should promote unity, fairness, and equality. And for people to be left out of a voting process, that means they're left out of the system. And we have too many instances of our government from Washington to the poorhouse, wherein people are disenfranchised because they don't have a vote. So I support a bill that has a vote for everybody, and everybody having an equal vote and equal opportunity to have their voice heard.
Thank you. Reverend Richard, yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Reverend Leroy Richards of First Community Church of the Nazarene. Our church is down there at 9A, and I live in Greenburgh. I've lived in Greenburgh for almost 40 years, raised my children here. And this issue is an important issue to me personally and to the people who I represent at First Community. I agree with so much that has already been said, and I don't want to keep up your time by reiterating them. But I go back to the time when somebody said taxation without representation ain't right. It was true then, and it's true now. I don't want my taxes to be raised and I don't have a say in it. And I think you'll agree with that for yourself. But more than that, our church is first community, and we believe in community. We believe in fairness. We believe in looking out for each other. And what Edgemont is trying to do is selfish. It's class warfare, and I don't believe in that. Let me close with a little anecdote. There were a group of people on a ship, and the seas got rocky. And the folks thought they'd look out for themselves, and everybody rushed to one side of the boat. What happened? The whole thing turned over. So self-interest is not always the best way for anybody or any community. Again, I support these initiatives that you've been hearing about that are taking place in Albany. And I'll be ready to do what I can to forward the movement towards maintaining the integrity of the town of Greenburgh. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a number of members of the town board here. I would invite them to come up and come up, members of the town board, and I would ask them to come up. Okay, I'd like to introduce a member of the town board, Ken Jones, and he will be the first speaker.
Thank you, Walter. The most important thing I see with respect to this pending legislation is fairness. That's what it's really all about, fairness. Why should the will of the few get to control the majority? As Hugh Schwartz said earlier, this is an outmoded bill. It's 100 years old. It was created for farming communities. This is the farthest thing from a farming community in the suburbs of Westchester County in 2021 as we could possibly get. The motivation behind the original bill is simply inapplicable now. And what we're looking at in a situation like we face here in Greenburgh is the majority of voters who vote in a small section of the town, okay? 5,000 voters, if 1,500 people vote to incorporate, then they can incorporate regardless of what happens to the other 40,000 people that live in the town and will remain in the unincorporated area. It's all about fairness, and that just isn't fair. So we've got to gather together to really make sure that we make our voices heard and understand that what we're really talking about here is fairness. And in the sense of fairness, we want to make sure that this legislation passes. Thank you.
Paul, would you say something?
I'd just like to first thank Assemblymember Abinanti for sponsoring the legislation. I'd like to thank the clergy for speaking out on this issue, and I'd like to thank everybody here for taking the time to express yourselves. The civic leaders who are here, Alicia Ford, I see Lou Sanchez, and others. The major concern that I have is that if one wealthy hamlet breaks away from the town, others will follow. And eventually, Fairview will be its own village. Fairview right now, over 40% of Fairview is tax exempt. So if Fairview would become its own village at some point, they will not have the ability of supporting the community center and many other social programs.
Horses, the cows, and the crops. We're not horses, cows, or crops. We're people. We matter. And so it's time for the people that remain in the unincorporated area to have a say, particularly in a suburban town. The town of Greenburgh is a suburban town, which means it's been developed. So I think that by recognizing that we matter and that fairness matters, this bill should be approved. I thank you.
The word here today is fairness. And this is what we have heard, and this is what you have known that I have been talking about since I came into office. And if we're not fair to each other, then how can we live as fairly in a community? It's a 100-year-old bill that's out there. We're very different from 100 years ago. So we have an opportunity here to make something and fix something and improve something that's been out there for 100 years. 100 years. So we have to work together. We have to come together. We have to understand what would hurt other communities if we break away or things change and there's an incorporation. It'll be devastating. And I do understand Edgemont's pain, and I do understand their concerns, and I've spoken to them. But I have to say again, we have to be fair across the board. And we have to become, as a community, as one. We talk about our theme as Greenburgh togetherness. Here's an opportunity here to show again Greenburgh being together and coming together. So please everyone, when we think about this and we reflect back on the word of fairness, and reflect back on the fact that this bill is 100 years old. So we all need to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this morning to talk about pending legislation in Albany. And I think everyone understands the issue is one of fairness. And from that one basic building block of fairness, then you could construct a law that is fair to everyone. So that is the key, a law that is fair. There is a petition going around town. I hope that that's being circulated to register your interest in having a fair law passed. I would encourage everyone to, if you have that email, that site, to distribute it among all your friends on your particular email list for them to get a hold of it and sign that petition to send it in. I think this is extremely important. And it's extremely important that we maintain that focus, that we want to be vested in the interests of the entire town. And as it was amply stated time and time again, that must be rooted in fairness. Not what is good for me and is bad for you or vice versa, but what is fair to everyone. So I thank you again for coming out. I encourage you to put your name on the signature, on the petition that's going around that will be sent up to Stuart Cousin, and other members of the legislature to really emphasize the support of the entire town, that we want a bill that is fair. So thank you again for coming out. I appreciate everyone taking the time on this hot day to come out, sit in the sun, but it's important that we make these types of sacrifices if we're really, truly interested in the long-term survival of our town. So thank you.
And I should just also mention that the petition, change.org, we just put it up with just very limited circulation, and it already has 512 signatures. And that's with virtually no effort. So I think that as people get educated, more and more people are going to realize the importance of, of this effort.
Thank you.
What